Hello, everyone. Glad to be back. This is a game from the Grand Swiss tournament that's going on right now. Round six. This game is between Alexey Shirov with the white pieces and Alireza Firoujza with the black pieces. Just want to encourage everybody. Please like, subscribe, and check the links below in order to support the channel. You'll find some good books, DVDs down there related to the opening that we're gonna discuss today. So this game actually took place November 1st, and it started off E4 from Shirov, C6, D4, D5, E5. So we have an advanced variation of the Caro-Kann. In yesterday's game, I analyzed the game between MVL and Pankratov, where they battled in the advanced French defense variation. Now, just a little tip: if you're trying to put an opening repertoire together, it's good to play similar systems. In the advanced French variation, in the advanced Caro-Kann, very similar themes. So you can save yourself a lot of time when putting your openings together by, thinking in these terms. Okay, the openings are very similar. The difference, or the main difference rather, is in the main line of the Caro-Kann advanced variation. Black chooses to get his bishop out of the pawn chain, whereas in the advanced French, the emphasis is on fast counterplay on the queen side with moves such as c5, right? Black will commit to the early e6 and then play c5, countering on the queen side immediately, following up with queen b6, etc. And of course, black, as a result, will often have trouble getting his light square bishop into the game and has to settle for placing it on d7 or sometimes b6. There's various schemes where black will try to even trade it off on b5, so it is a problem. However, he gets to play c5 and counterattack the white pawn chain quickly. In the advanced Caro-Kann, black is getting his bishop out early, as you can see, to f5 outside the pawn chain. Now he can close the pawn chain up with e6. However, there's no pressure on white center immediately. So this allows white time to solidify and fortify his center and not worry so much about the counterattack. All right, but the play strategically is generally going to fall to the wings, on the queen side, king side, since the center is blocked. And again, learning both openings of both systems, or playing both systems if you're an E4 player, very convenient way to go about economizing your chess study. All right, so bishop f4 was played. H4, very aggressive system, old system. There are many fantastic games by Grandmaster John Nunn in 80s and 90s in this system. Also, MVL, again, expert in this system. And the idea is basically play moves like g4, gain a lot of space on the queen side, attack and punish black for developing his bishop and trying to show that it is quite vulnerable. So there's many a miniature game in this line. Of course, as time goes on, use of engines and etc. Black is find adequate ways to defend against this. Now here, black plays h5. Usually, there's two moves that get played here. It's h5 and h6. h6 allows white to take more space on the queen side. On the king side, but it protects the g5 square. All right, so it's kind of like you have to pick your poison. All right. h5 holds white back on the king side, but gives up the g5 square. All right, so often white strategy is to trade off the dark square bishops and then try to exploit the the resulting weakness on the dark squares. So let's see what happens in this game. So first, Shirov trades the bishops off, the light square bishop. So there goes Black's bad bishop, so to speak, or potentially bad bishop. And actually, that's White's good bishop strategically. Also, since White's pawns are on dark squares. All right. So strategically, trading off the light square bishops is good for Black. However, what White gets in return, he gets some speedy development, and also he wants to play e6. Of course, he's fantasizing because a good player is not going to allow White to get in the move e6. For instance, if he got into e6, then f7 will be compromised, and White would get a easy a game here. All right, so often played as moves like e6, knight c3, sometimes even c4, right, to try to open the position while Black is behind in development. Here, Alireza plays queen a5 check, and now knight d2, and of course, eventually that knight has to move again. Bishop d2 is playable, right, with similar play to that in the game. But knight d2 was played with the following plan of knight b3 and eventually landing on c5. Again, this is a long-term strategic plan. The bishop on c1 is White's quote-unquote bad bishop. All right, so strategically, White would love to trade the bishops off. Okay, and again, same theme in the French advanced variation. All right, strategic common themes to trade off those bishops. So e6, knight gf3, knight h6, castle, knight f5. Again, same themes in the French. Often that knight will go to g6 or f5. And now knight b3. You can see gaining tempo against the queen. Another move is c4 here. Also, the idea of opening up the position before Black can really get developed. Knight b3, queen a6. Okay, now offering to trade the queens here. Shirov plays queen d1. And now bishop e7. And now you can see bishop g5. Bishop takes g5. Bishop f8 is possible also. Avoiding the trade of queens, but Black's development becomes a little bit laborious. So bishop takes g5. In between move here, knight c5 from Shirov. And now queen b6. Shirov takes with the knight and plays knight takes g5. In the game, Collars, who was rated 2586, and Kobalya, who was rated 2614, h takes g5 was played. And the idea here, again, is to play the move g6. Black's pawn structure is very solid, and the position is also closed. With these two factors on the board, Black can afford to be behind in development. However, if the position is abruptly open at any time, he's going to be in trouble. So what happened after h takes g5 in this game, h4 was played, which allowed the tactical blow g6. And after f takes g6, knight takes e6, king e7, the position just fell apart for with all, you can see all kind of threats. The position just fell apart for Black. Fork threat on g6, rook h6, queen d3, knight d7, and then just take anyway. Knight takes g6, queen takes f5, and White went on to win. And like I said, if Black makes any mistake allowing the position to abruptly open like that, he's going to be in trouble due to lack of coordination, lack of harmony in the position, and being behind in development. All right, instead of h4 there, which is obviously a blunder, knight d7 attacking this knight on c5 is the way to go immediately. Okay, and then you just got, you have a game there. Position remains closed, but, it's a game. So H takes G5 is definitely an alternative. Shirov opted for knight takes G5. All right. And now knight A6 here. All right. Um, knight takes H4 here. It's possible. Um, sorry about that. It's possible, but play will be similar to that which we see in the game. And also, black has to be very careful of just like snatching pawns. For instance, you see the pawn on B2 on Pries. Black always has to be careful while he's behind in development like this, so that the position doesn't, get suddenly, broken open. All right. So Firoujza wisely continues his development. Knight takes A6 from Shirov. Queen takes A6. And now C3. Better here would probably be a move like Queen F3, keeping the pressure on the position. Notice black can't take on D4 or H4 due to the threats against the F7 pawn. All right, and play can continue, say G6, Rook FD1, and so on. And maybe Queen B6 here, where white easily defends with Rook B1 and C3. Again, black is equalized. Enough pieces have come off the board. And notice the key factor here is that black has still kept the position closed. As long as the position is closed, the lack of development from black is not going to really show up. So this is trademark of this kind of, advanced Caro-Kann. It's just black, it's very patient, complete, remains solid. Pawn structure is perfect. And then just gradually unravels, develops, and equalizes. Instead, Shirov played C3 here. Another option too is G3. Also just to protect that pawn. And let's say if Queen B6 with the double attack on B2 and D4, Shirov could just play C3. And again, black has to be very careful pawn grabbing. After Queen takes B2, Rook B1, Queen takes C3. And although black has gained an extra pawn, the position becomes perilous here. Has to be very careful. Right, he can't just castle king side because of the H5 pawn, and these are the type of things when black loses quickly in the Caro-Kann, it's usually because of those type of errors, pawn grabbing, getting relaxed and thinking you could just snatch an extra pawn or something like that, and then next thing you know, you end up the position's open, king in the middle, and all downhill from there. So instead of G3 and Queen F3, Shirov played C3. And now, Alireza, excuse me, played knight takes H4. G3. And then he just went back, knight F5. King G2. And you can see the difference here. Alireza snatched the pawn, but there's no opening of the position. Where's the compensation? Right? There's no attack from white as a result. It's like he just took the pawn and said thank you and just left. Queen B6. Now the B pawn is being attacked. B4 from Shirov. Queen D8 attacking the knight on G5. Queen D2. Queen E7 from Alireza. Now this ideas of castling on the queen side from Alireza. And at this point, black is better because he's just up a pawn. White doesn't have any attack and any compensation. Rook AB1 from Shirov. So he's kind of anticipating a queenside castle at some point and wants to be ready to attack with B5. Rook H6. So Alireza, kind of waits. He's like, he's not in a rush. His king is safe in the center. Only thing is that he wants to get that rook on A8 into the game. But he waits a little bit. Although he could have castled here. Rook H1. And now Alireza takes up the challenge. And remember what I said earlier, how the play shifts to the wings, right? The position in the center is locked. The pawns are locked, so therefore play has to be on the king side and queen side respectively. One principle to remember that in opposite wing attacks, when one side is castled on the queen side and the other your opponent is castled on the king side, pawns usually don't matter that much. The game becomes more dynamic, and what matters is who gets their attack in first. All right, so a lot of the static features have to take a back seat, right? So material shouldn't be considered in such high regard in these type of positions, right? If you could sacrifice a pawn or a piece to break through to the other side to the enemy king, that's oftentimes is going to be paramount over just having an extra pawn or something like that. This is why, although black is better, Shirov does have chances because of the dynamic aspects in the position. Let's go. B5. All right. Now, does Alireza want to open up the position here? Does he really want to do that? The answer is no. He really doesn't want to open up the position. Right? He doesn't want to play C takes B5. All right? So he would like to play C5 if he could. He plays C takes B5. Now, why? If he plays C5, then he has to give up a pawn himself. By D takes C5. The reason is since the knight is on G5. Remember, I was telling you about exploiting the G5 square earlier when black plays H5. If he captures, then just simply knight takes F7. So he can't capture there. He would have to play, like something else. Maybe rook to G6 or something like that, attacking the knight again. All right. So Alireza, he takes. C takes. Rook takes B5. H4. Okay, and of course, Shirov doesn't want the position to be open against his king. His king's a little drafty also. So now it's a race. Who's going to get to who's king first here? And this is an exciting game because they're both very dynamic players, just from different generations. Shirov is from that 90s class, of grandmasters with Kramnik, Anand, right, Ivanchuk. And for Alireza is from the new generation, right? But both with similar attacking styles, dynamic flair in their play. G4 was played, and you see the knight being attacked here. Alireza plays H3. Interesting here is rook G6 right away. And if F4, protecting the knight, then knight G3, rook HB1, B6, queen D3, F5, and black is still in the driver's seat here, although it's some dynamic play here. As you can see by this move, rook C5, check. All right, king B8. The rook cannot be safely captured. King B8, queen A6, and then of course, black can go into a nice Caro-Kann endgame here, and this is why black will have the edge here. Rook G6 was not played. Instead, Alireza played H3 first. And Shirov played King F1. The reason why Shirov plays King F1, he doesn't want the H file to be opened to his detriment. So, for example, after rook takes H3, rook takes, knight H4 check, King F1. You can see black taking over the H file. And remember what I said about material in these opposite wing attacks is not as important, and this is why Shirov is not thirsty and eager to regain the material. Instead, he just He just falls back, plays king f1. Only thing is that it breaks his coordination temporarily. Notice the rook on h1 is like totally passive. He would love to be able to swing the rook on h1 to b1 to support the rook on b5. So that's the downside of that. Alireza shifts focus. Rook g6, double attack on the knight here. Shirov captures. Alireza captures the knight. F takes e6. F takes e6 here. And now Shirov finally captures. What I thought was interesting, instead of capturing back, playing this move, I thought rook h5 was interesting, supporting this passed pawn. Very dangerous. Black has to keep an eye on it. I'm sorry, white has to keep an eye on that. It doesn't really matter if he, captures on f7. So, for example, play could go queen e2. And although rook d5 is possible, black could totally ignore that and just play rook d to h8. Idea being, if rook d5, then f6, rook b5, h2. Lot of pressure on the white position there. Another idea, instead of taking on d5, e takes f7, queen takes f7. Again, I like this position also for black. But Alireza chose to just capture. And this allows Shirov to capture with the rook, get the rook back in the game. And now rook f5. So now the focus is going to shift to the f file for black. And on the f2 pawn. c4. Again, Shirov is racing. He wants to get the position open so that he can attack, counterattack black. D takes c4. Queen c3. Rook d f8. Check. King moves out the way, but now you have to address the situation on f2. Rook b2. Queen f7. Look at that. Almost an Alexey's gun formation, but that would only occur if the queen was on f8. So queen e2. Queen c7. Of course, for Alireza would love queen c1 in the game here. Queen c2 from Shirov, stopping that. And now I believe Alireza makes an error here. He plays queen d7. All right, he attacks the pawn on d4, but it gives gives white the counterplay that he needs. Remember, the static features aren't that important. The pawns, picking up pawns and things like that. Shirov responds in a dynamic fashion and plays rook hb3, attacking the b7 pawn and causing white to create weakness in the position. Instead of queen d7, rook takes f2 here. Queen takes f2. Queen c4. Check. King g2. And then rook takes f2. And you're going into this ending where you have the two rooks versus the queen. But the extra pawns that black has, combined with the exposed king of white, should win this for black. So queen d4, right? And now you're up 2 pawns and white's king is exposed. Let's say rook g3, for example, and then g6. Great move, because now if rook takes g6, queen e4 check, and you're going to pick up that rook. So that pawn is immune, at least temporarily. This is just a sample line that I analyzed. Rook e2, protecting the e-pawn, of course. Queen c4, harassing rook on e2, and play will continue. But I think this is black's best chance to win. All right, he has extra pawns, and I'll just keep going in my line. And again, it's not just having the extra pawns; it's the fact that white's king is exposed. All right, white's king is exposed, and white also has isolated pawns. So black is and black's king is pretty safe. All right, black is always going to be able to hide his king and he just has to slowly bring these pawns down the board. Again, this is just a sample line here. And I think that black should win this game with careful play. Of course, I can't judge Alireza for not playing rook takes f2. He probably figured he could win in a simpler way. I'm sure he looked at it and he said, well, I don't really want to go into, two rooks versus queen ending. He probably just figured that he could win the game by just, having extra material. Winning the pawn, for instance. He already has his rooks doubled on the F file. He probably felt comfortable with that. And perhaps even using the G pawn to add more pressure down the F file at some point. But after queen d7, it allows this rook to come right back in the game. And that's another support point for my argument earlier that black should have kept the H pawn, because it would have kept that rook pinned down to the H file. Right? Now the H pawn is gone and the rook is free and attacking now. B6. Now rook takes f2 is not as effective. See, rook takes f2, queen takes, and you can see black has a little bit, white has more coordination here. So for instance, queen takes d4, rook f8 check, king c7, rook comes to the seventh rank, and white is going to be able to stand this, from black. And I think this is what black was worried about before, but in that other position, white wouldn't be able to get this piece placement. All right. So here, Firoujza rightfully decides not to play rook takes f2, but instead plays b6. B6. And now Shirov, being the player that he is, being dynamic, Mr. Fire on board himself, plays queen c5, and the game is going to be a draw. Rook takes b6 is a very strong threat here. Firoujza plays queen b7, and of course he's threatening to play queen, win with queen h1 himself. However, after rook takes b6, a takes b6, rook takes b6, the game is going to go into a draw. After rook takes f2, king e1, and you're going to get this repetition. Shirov cannot go to e3 because he wound up getting mated. All right. Let's go back real quick. Queen c5 is very a good move. If king a8, if king a8, same thing. Rook takes b6. It's gonna end in the draw. And black would have to keep checking because of the rook on b7 being vulnerable to capture. So even though that ended in a draw, that was an exciting draw. Queen c5, very strong move, very good resource from Shirov. Very well played game in my opinion, both sides. I like how Alireza neutralized the position. I like how he was patient in the opening. He didn't go pawn grabbing, kept his position solid, and he gradually traded off pieces. He dealt with the weaknesses in the position, such as that on g5. He showed good maturity in this play, and he eventually achieved what I thought was a winning position, but he didn't find that knockout blow that was necessary. And then Shirov showed great resilience, finding the resources in the proper counterplay at the end to draw the game. So I hope you enjoyed that video. Please like and subscribe, and also check the links below to support the channel. And also I'm gonna put some DVDs and book options in the links below if you're interested in this variation of the Caro-Kann. So once again, thank you, for hanging out with me while I analyze the game. And get in the comment section. Let me know what you think. And I'll talk to you guys soon. I'll see you in the next video.